Hello and welcome to the Underhand Free Throws Eastern Conference predictions for this NBA season. In this video, me and Ian are going to go over how we think that the teams in the East are going to stack up this year. So obviously the regular season has already started. We already have 1 to 2 games under the belt of just about every team in the league. However, we recorded this before the season started. And then also we will get to our Western Conference predictions. That will be sometime next week, and that will be with a couple more games underway. But we did make all of our picks for all these teams before we had opening day tip off. We tried to keep it short, but it's the underhand free throw. We kind of go crazy and go really in depth on all this stuff. So I understand the video is long and it was a lot of work to put together and edit. So a like would be much appreciated. So with that, let's get started and let's go over all these teams in the Eastern Conference and how me and Ian think that they're going to stack up this year. So how we're going to structure this is we're going to start from the bottom and make our way to the top, and we'll each give our pick for the number 15 seed in the East, and we'll make shocked faces at each other and argue and disagree. And then we're going to work our way up just gradually from 15 to 1, and we'll see how much we line up. I have not seen Ian's predictions recently. I don't know if he's changed them within the last few days, but last time I glanced at them, I didn't commit anything really all that close to memory, and I don't think you've seen mine either. So this will be a surprise for both of us.
Who is your 15th ranked Eastern Conference team in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, grabbing a front row seat?
Yeah, so my number 15 team in the East is the only team that just about everyone seems to agree is going to be bad this year, and that's in the Eastern Conference at least. There are some bad teams in the West, but that is the Indiana Pacers. I do see them making a trade this year and trying to get to the bottom of the standings and tank away, man. This is the year to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the same pick there, so no big shocked surprise faces for me this year. I don't actually love putting them all the way down there. I think it is the fact that they're so likely to blow it up that
Yeah,
they get that variability where you're comfortable putting them down at 15th. Like I think Tyrese Halliburton is going to be awesome this year. I think if Miles Turner stays on the team, they're going to be a nice duo, and like Miles Turner will live his best life, catching lobs from Tyrese Halliburton as well as spacing the floor for him. Benedict Mathurin has looked awesome in preseason.
awesome. Yeah,
Like just some
he's going
goofy
to be good.
highlights. Yeah, they have a couple other, like Chris Duarte is a really useful piece, and he's kind of an older, like he's not as young as a lot of people think he is. He was a rookie last year, but he's already like 24 or whatever. So but he'll bring shooting. They've got some pieces there. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be the thing for them to try to like make the play in. So
Yeah,
the Miles Turner trade is all we're waiting for.
Everyone's assuming they're going to blow up just because it makes too much sense for them to do so.
Yeah.
So who is your number 14 seed in the East? Slightly better than the Pacers.
Yeah, I'm call me a hater, but I got the Wizards all the way down here. I don't feel good about this one.
That is low. That is low. I mean, they're a team that has Brad Beal hopefully coming back from knee surgery. He had a down year last year, but just a lot of okay-ish players on their roster. It's not a terrible team.
No,
but
I just think they're gonna have a really, looking at their team. I wasn't trying to put the Wizards at 14. I sort of expected them to be closer to the play-in. But when I looked at the roster and thought about what the offense was going to be like and what the defense is going to be like, I just think they're going to be in the bottom 5 or 6 in both those categories. And I just think that's a really good formula to be at the bottom of the East. I don't trust Bradley Beal's health. I think his defense is awful. Kristaps Porzingis is another guy. I don't trust his health. I do trust his defense, but he's kind of like, are him and Kyle Kuzma going to anchor an average NBA defense? I think they lost the Denver trade. Everyone talked about that as like a good trade for both teams. Like, I think they lost that trade badly. If you've been watching a lot of the Nuggets, like Will Barton is just, he's older now. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he took another step back this season. Just like going top to bottom on that Wizards roster, I have a really hard time picturing them being good on either end of the floor.
Yeah, I think you're right on with the Wizards trade in 2022, 2023 NBA season land. The team that gets a starting level 3-and-D wing out of a trade, especially if the other team does not get one, it's a bit of a lopsided trade.
Yeah.
But at number 14, This is where we have our first disagreement already. I am going to go with the Pistons of Detroit as my
Oh, wow, that's
14th
okay.
team.
Why do you hate the Detroit Pistons? What have they
Well,
ever done to you to deserve this?
I love Cade Cunningham. I really
Mm-hmm.
do see him as the future of the team. And I think we're going to grow to love Jalen Duren and possibly Jaden Ivey as well.
You're a
I just
Jaden
think the
Ivey
team
hater. I just want if anyone doesn't know this at home, Simon is an Ivy hater.
I'm a little bit low on small-ish combo guards who lack a little bit on the defensive and playmaking sides. Just kind of as a rule of thumb, uh, it's not necessarily specific to Jaden Ivey, but he's certainly very talented. And at the very least, like Jaden Ivey's like 6'4", I think. He's not tiny. So that in and of itself, the fact that he is like shooting guard size rather than a lot of these combo guards are smaller than that. I think that helps somewhat. But I just think it's a young team. They got a lot of rookies or second year players that are still adapting to the NBA game and aren't necessarily going to impact winning a lot. So I see them well set up for the future, but not for right now.
Yeah. I'm higher in the Pistons. I won't reveal where I have them yet. I'm on board for this core. I wouldn't be surprised if they were bad for another year. But I'm excited to watch Cade Cunningham figure it out. I think I like the bolster of athleticism they got in the draft with Duran and Ivy next to Cade. You know, just like again, people for him to throw the ball in transition, and Jalen Duran as a rim finisher that they kind of he didn't have a lob threat last year. Like I was saying earlier with Trey, it's really important to have a lob threat next to a passer that good who's creative. Like, you know, Cade's trying to be like that skinny Luca archetype.
Yeah.
So yeah, give him someone who can get above the rim and throw down dunks. I'm a really big Sadiq Bey fan. I'm hoping for him to
Oh yeah.
kind of for his shooting to stabilize this year, because I can see him being sort of in a similar category to things we said about OG Anunoby and hopes we have for DeAndre Hunter. I think he looms as a sneaky good starting wing. So I'm hoping they fast track their development and they get closer to the play-in this year. But it's not. I don't think it's wild for you to have them all the way down close to 14. But I am surprised you have them lower than where the 13th ranked team that I have, which is the Orlando Magic. So tell me why the Orlando Magic are going to be better than the Detroit Pistons this year.
Well, I think there's two main reasons. One of the reasons is Franz Wagner.
Love Franz Wagner.
The other reason is Paulo Banchero.
Yep, love both those players. Those are my two favorite parts of the Magic team.
I mean, the Magic aren't bad defensively. They weren't bad last year. I think they'll improve and get even better this year. Jalen Suggs, despite his shooting struggles, was already by some metrics one of the best perimeter defenders in the league last year. And I think he's going to get better. I think that like the team as a whole is going to improve a lot offensively. Just having another year with Franz, he was so great on the German national team this summer. You know, playing in Euro Cup.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Germany really surprised a lot of people, and
yeah,
I know Dennis Schroeder got a lot of credit for that, but from my vantage point, Franz Wagner was really the engine making that team go. And then I think Paulo's just going to be a machine already from day one out of the box. I think he's going to be a really effective offensive piece.
Yeah, I'm so excited about the future of the Orlando Magic because of those two players. I just love that they've got these two multi-position like giant dude. Like I didn't realize how big Paolo was until like saw him standing next to other people on draft night, and it was just like I was like, yeah, he's probably like legit 6'9". That I see him was like, you know, besides like Chet and Mark Williams, Paolo was just towering over everyone. I'm like, how big is this guy? And his passing,
I think he measured 6'10" barefoot, so 6'11" in shoes.
Yeah, that's
and
like
Franz is about is almost as tall as he is. So they're huge.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Franz in the draft as well. Like more for his defense. I didn't see his offense being this good this soon. So he's definitely a guy who has completely changed his projections into what kind of NBA player he could be. Like I don't think anyone was talking about his defense in his rookie year, even though like that's how he came in as a defensive sort of versatile glue guy. and then it was immediately like Orlando's best offensive player this year. So I love those two guys. Why I'm a little bit lower on Orlando than you are is just like they're gonna have a non-shooting backcourt almost no matter what happens. Like they're gonna need to have like I think
Yeah.
like I mean Gary Harris is tore his meniscus. So
Yep.
they're down that shooter, which means they're going to be playing Terrence Ross a lot more than they want to. I like Jalen Suggs, but offensively, it was quite alarming how the level he was at offensively last year was a bit concerning. So we're talking about a backcourt that has Markelle Fultz and Jalen Suggs, and it's like you're gonna like Cole Anthony can shoot it and loves to shoot it, but it's just you're going to put these guys out and you're going to put them out sometimes with two centers because you love to play you love to play Wendell Carter Jr. at power forward. Mo Bamba actually can shoot it out of the front court. I just think like that's a setup for an offensive mess, and it's going to be pretty difficult. And a lot of their complementary pieces are below average shooters as well. And who knows if Jonathan Isaac could come back, that might change things.
Well, the Magic have been terrible on offense for as long as we can remember. I mean, it's been since the Dwight days, last time they were a good offensive team. It's been a really long time. And they were 30th last year, worst team in the NBA offensively. And
dead last, 29th the year before that.
Yeah.
23rd the year before that was like when they were making the playoffs as like a bottom 10 offense with elite defense. I don't think their defense is going to be strong next year. I think they could totally be average on defense, but I don't know.
I appreciate that you mentioned Gary Harris tore his meniscus because this is a great litmus test to tell that most people don't pay much attention to the Magic. I can't even think of how many NBA preview podcasts or shows I've listened to leading up to the season this year where they talk about how Gary Harris is going to help the Magic this year.
He would have. It was a good idea. Like when they re-signed him, I'm like, that makes sense. They do need him to like make lineups work. And when he went down, I just felt the Magic lineups are not going to work. I don't know. Maybe Bull will have a big breakout season there or something. Who knows? Like the Magic are super fun. I definitely look forward to tuning into some Magic games. None of these teams at the bottom of the East are that good. So if Orlando finishes above Detroit, I'm not going to be super surprised. But just again, when I look at sort of offense and defense, I can't picture I actually have the Mavericks. Sorry, I have the Magic finishing as a 15th ranked defense in the NBA. But I think offensively, I have them like 27th in the bottom 5 somewhere, and that's not going to be quite good enough in my randomly made projections to crawl out of the basement. Anyways, who do you have 13th?
A tad better in both those categories. The team that I think is going to be worse than the Magic this year is going to be the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, I think that's a solid take, though. 538 projections were very high on the Hornets. They have them finishing 500. I'm like, do they know about what's happening in Hornets? I think the one upside possibility, I think, with the Hornets, besides like their young guys taking a step forward or LaMelo Ball coming out as a huge star, is like, what if Gordon Hayward was just healthy all year? That could be sort of an underrated thing that makes him closer to average than really bad. Like Gordon Hayward is a very, very good player, even after his injuries. He's such a solid offensive glue guy who's like doesn't hurt you at all on defense, is a pretty strong kind of combo forward defensively. So I could see that making the Hornets closer to average if he can just finally have a healthy year after injuries just completely ruined a young all-star.
Well, I'm going to go the other way, and I think this will become apparent in a lot of my takes on where these teams will finish in the standings. I'm baking a little bit of projection into who's going to succumb to the tank race and who's not, who's going to continue fighting for a play-in spot. And the Hornets are one of those teams where it just the dearth of talent on this roster, it just makes so much sense for them to be bad this year.
Yeah.
And try to pick up. I mean, they have drafted several big men in the past few years. Who knows with Mark Williams, he could be great, but the last few attempts at it have not worked out. So there's just not a lot on this roster. Mark Williams
in the draft.
Yeah, I love how mobile he is at his size, and he has really soft hands, and I think he has a promising future. I don't necessarily think he's going to be make or break for the Hornets this year. And it just
rookie centers usually suck too. So
this is just a team that needs an infusion of talent, and the roster talent is bad around LaMelo, and it makes too much sense for them to try to unload Hayward or try to keep him out with an injury. not like that's going to
I
be
mean,
too difficult to do.
he
It might
might do
just
that.
happen anyway.
He might do
He
that
might
for
do that
them. Yeah,
himself.
might help them
Yeah.
out. Um, yeah, I think like I was sort of like looking at teams earlier in terms of whether like there's like teams in both conferences that are rebuilding, and then teams that don't think they're rebuilding, but they probably should be. And I really
They
didn't
should
know
be.
where to
Yeah.
put Charlotte, because Charlotte was flirting with the play-in tournament and making the playoffs a lot last season. They came out of the gates pretty hot and
Yeah.
felt like they were ahead of schedule.
Well, they got the
Um,
10 seed, but
yeah,
they
yeah,
got blasted by Atlanta in their singular play-in game. So
yeah. Um, they it feels like it's not. It just when you look at their roster, it's like yeah, you got Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward and Mason Plumlee as these, good NBA players. You know that they're not none of those guys are a part of your future. Like it does feel a little bit like, why don't you rip off the band-aid right
yeah,
now? You've got some really really young guys on this roster. It's not just LaMelo. Like they drafted some guys last year that barely got to play because they were trying to make the playoffs. They got Kai Jones, they got JT Thor, they got Jalen McDaniels. Like those guys weren't really seeing the court because it was like sometimes it really was like the Terry Rozier show and the Mason Plumlee like short roll show. And as you know, they built a very functional NBA offense that way. Like they're the ninth ranked offense overall. And earlier in the year, they were way higher than that. They were like a top three offense for a lot of the regular season. But it feels like a good time for them to kind of look themselves in the mirror and be like, okay, we're building around LaMelo and whoever else is coming with him. This is probably a
yeah,
good time to step back, be bad for one more year, 2 more years, get a couple more draft picks and then go for it, rather than be like, no, let's like try to make the playoffs on the back of a healthy Gordon Hayward season, Terry Rozier having like, bombing it from three for another year. And like, hey, we got LiAngelo Ball here to keep LaMelo company. So like, I think I hope that they feel like rebuilding. I think you never know with a Michael Jordan owned franchise, like I can see
yeah.
them, being too repulsed by that and going for it irrationally. Yeah, I'm pretty close to I've got the Hornets as my 12th ranked team, so we're pretty uniform on them. And it's like, just like, you can be bad this year, Hornets. Like there's no pressure this year. Like you don't need to impress us.
Yeah, and for my number 12 team, I have the Wizards of Washington. So we've filled in most of the same blanks in these lower four. You have the Magic in there, I have the Pistons in there, but otherwise,
Yeah,
like we're pretty consistent in calling out having the same bad teams, the same bad
yeah.
spots. So
Let's fill out the bottom five. Who do you got at 11?
yeah, my number 11 team. This is kind of a heartbreaker. I really didn't necessarily want to do this, but I just cannot trust the health or the defensive cohesion of the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, that's tough for Chicago fans. I'm not that far. I'm not that far off, but yeah, Chicago. I hated the team they put together last year.
Mhm.
Like this time last year, I was definitely amongst the loud haters of the roster construction of the Chicago Bull in terms of adding DeMar DeRozan to the Vucevic trade with Zach LaVine there, and just being like, this team is going to just be the worst defense in the league by far. Even and it was hard to, like, their offense was like, had potential to be a top five offense, but the defense was going to be so bad. And then they just came out and like like danced on the graves of all their haters, and were just like, Alex
Yeah,
Caruso and Lonzo Ball were just playing the most inspired front court backcourt defense, point of attack defense that I have seen. And I'm gonna, this is a Chicago Bulls joke here. This is the most inspired point of attack defense I've seen since Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen decided they needed to put Tony Kukoc in his place when Team USA played Croatia or Yugoslavia or whatever it was back then. Like when they were pulling a Pippen and Jordan on Kukoc on the
yeah,
league for the first like 20 games of the season. And it was like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was just like I've been hating on them so so much and they're doing so well. It's like Billy Donovan's clearly a genius coach and everything's working out, and DeMar DeRozan is having his best season ever. And somehow like they're not hemorrhaging points with a front court that was very often like Nick Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan at like power forward.
Yeah.
So it was shocking, but it does feel like with Lonzo Ball's injury, they're not going to catch that lightning in the bottle again. They're going to face the way their season ended last year was how most of us expect for it to begin this year. Yeah.
We may not see Lonzo Ball this year. And I know,
I
think the initial medical reports are that he's expected to miss like 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. I just think that's wildly optimistic based off of what we're hearing out of him this offseason. Like he can't run without feeling discomfort and pain. It just feels like this guy is, hopefully he gets healthy and is in a spot where he can be a productive NBA player, but B, just, not have physical issues continue the rest of his life. But I think it is optimistic to expect that to happen this season.
It sounds super discouraging. I'm bummed. I like Lonzo Ball's game a lot. I think he's a very interesting player. Yeah.
So who do you have at your number 11 seed? Last team to just barely miss out on the play-in.
I got the Knicks.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I just don't think they've really. I like Jalen Brunson a bunch. And I think he's a good signing for them, and I think he will help. I think this team is still just fundamentally built to have the crunchiest offense in the NBA. Like even like Jalen Brunson can shoot, but he's at his best when he's allowed to get into the paint and unleash hell on unsuspecting defenders with his sort of like short, thick Tony Parker impression. There's just 4 guys in their starting lineup who all want to just truck it at the rim. Like Julius Randle wants to force shots in the paint. Mitchell Robinson is like purely a lob finisher who's like never allowed to touch the ball in a Tom Thibodeau offense. RJ Barrett wants to like bury his head and shoulder into defenders and get to the rim. And now you've added Brunson to that. So just like maybe with the exception of Brunson, none of those guys are actually like, elite and efficient at like generating that offense at the rim. They're all like I feel if you put any of those guys on a better spaced out team, they would be a little bit more effective in that role. But on the Knicks, where it's just going to be so crunchy on offense, I just see them, being not a bottom 5 offense, but like not that much better. I think I've got them predicted to be near the top of the bottom 10, around like 23rd. Or something like that, depending on how other teams do. So yeah, I just think it's gonna be a slog every single night, and it's gonna be a bit miserable. And I want RJ Barrett to be really good. He's my, he's been like he's like Canadian basketball royalty with his dad being the president of Canada basketball. But it's just I don't think I really like RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson, and ever since they drafted those guys, I was like, build around these 2 players and see what you got. But instead they just keep adding veterans to the roster who make it really hard for either of those players to play their best role. So we've seen them both stagnate. They haven't really improved since their rookie season, and it's getting kind of discouraging in New York. Obviously they could be solid defensively and not that bad offensively and sneak into the play-in, but I have them falling out just short of that.
Well, I think they're obviously going to have to start Quentin Grimes, whether Tom Thibodeau will be willing to admit that day one, or whether he'll realize it as the season goes on. They just desperately need the shooting. And Mitchell Robinson, doesn't have the track record of being able to stay on the court for 82 games a year. Yeah. I think he's going to miss some time, and Hartenstein is going to get some minutes at the 5. And that's a guy who can shoot a little bit and also has like a really nice passing game for a big. So I think rim protection issues aside, he's a little bit of a downgrade from Mitchell Robinson, but I think
not much though. Isaiah Hartenstein was a very effective rim protector for the Clippers last year. Like
he's going to invigorate their offense when he's in the game.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit of an interesting move, and I think it might have been more about asset preservation when they re-signed Mitchell Robinson and brought in Isaiah Hartenstein, because it didn't really feel like Tom Thibodeau wanted Robinson. Like he's never really given him starters minutes, and he doesn't let him touch the ball. Like it's absurd. Like this guy takes 4.8 shots per game, despite being a starting center He actually was pretty
Yeah.
healthy last year. He played 72 games, so like that was
Okay.
but he hasn't. Again, there's other areas. He finishes 76% of his shots and gets less than 5 shots per game. It just seems like I think if you put Mitchell Robinson in a spread pick and roll offense, he would just be like dunking his way to a very efficient 15, 16 points per game. But the Knicks, again, it's just like it's the least happy paint to exist in.
Yeah.
And often it's just sort of like, can you get out of the way so that Julius Randle can like post up for 15 seconds before like dishing it out to like RJ Barrett for a contested corner three at the last second. Like, thanks, Mitch, you did your job. I love Hartenstein. I think like I do agree. Like he could he could just be on the floor because he cleans things up with his passing and his clever play. And he doesn't really give up that much defensively compared to Robinson, even if he's not quite as mobile. He's a lot smarter of a player. And then, everyone there loves Quentin Grimes. People there love Obi Toppin. There's upside in the Knicks. I don't trust Tibbs to do anything besides like play as veterans with 3 billion minutes a game and like, try to scrounge out every win and every possession. I'm still traumatized from the Tibbs era in Minnesota. So I can't, that's probably painting why I have the Knicks so low. I just don't believe in that.
Well, obviously I'm a little bit higher on the Knicks than you are, as I haven't had them appear in my standings yet. But another team I'm a little bit higher on than you are is the Magic, who I have as the 10 seed in the West,
Yeah.
and I think are going to make a bit of a surprise play-in berth. I obviously am not picking them to advance into the playoffs necessarily, but I do think they're going to have a little bit of postseason action this year.
Nice. I get the Pistons in this spot, so it seems like we both picked a young team to take a step, like a medium step forward this year. Magic and Pistons. I like the futures of both these teams, so I don't have too much of an argument there. If the Pistons take a step forward quicker than the Pistons do, I won't be crazy surprised, and I hope they both do. So now we get to go all the way up to 9, where
Number
I have
9.
the Bulls,
Okay.
the previously discussed Bulls.
So you don't see
who's left that you have.
You don't see the Lonzo injury as being as franchise ending as I do, I guess, with the Bulls there.
I just think that they were so good for portions of last year. I think I could easily have them lower when I look at I just think their offense is going to be solid all year. I think there's better offensive teams than them this year, so I don't have them finishing as a top 10 offense this year, but I think they will be good on that end if they don't get any more injured than they currently are. Like Levine is super dangerous. DeRozan is DeMar DeRozan. I don't feel like I want to get into a DeMar DeRozan hating fest. Vucevic spaces the floor. Love Alex Caruso. I just
in reply to Vucevic, I would say he's basically spaces the floor ish. In the Bucks series last year, the Bucks let him shoot whenever he wanted, and he didn't take a lot of those opportunities that were gifted to him, and many of the ones he did take clanged off the rim. So
it does feel like a little bit of a waste for him to just be in that kind of floor spacer role because he's not that good at it, and it's kind of not quite in the Brook Lopez fake stretch 5, but not that much better than that. And he's not going to play it. Like, for whatever reason, they're like, DeMar DeRozan is the only guy who's allowed to post up. DeMar DeRozan gets the whole paint all the time, and we will structure every lineup so that DeMar DeRozan basically gets to play the 5 on offense, and that's how we're going to like structure our offense. They got some young guys who could take steps forward. Like, we'll see Patrick Williams. I really like I like Dalen Terry at Arizona. He gave me some sort of like Penny Hardaway vibes.
He's a fun player.
I don't think Chicago's going to have a great season. We're arguing right now between whether Chicago will finish 9th or 12th. It's not a great scenario for them either way, because they put this team together to like be a pseudo contender and then just quickly realize like, damn, the whole rest of the East is better than us. But that's all I got to say about the Bulls. Good luck, Bulls.
Yeah, I hope things turn out better for them than we're projecting, but it's difficult to see them finishing above, the top 8 teams in the conference. And I think we're going to have the exact same top 8 teams, probably not in the same order, because I'm going to close the loop here with number 9. I have the Knicks,
Yeah,
I
there we
do.
go.
The reason why they're number 9 for me and not 10 or 11 out of the play-in is just because I think I'm high on the idea that they enjoyed the Julius Randle experience so much 2 years ago when he first got to New York that they went out and they signed the smaller Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. And I think he's going to be a just startlingly similar game with kind of his push to the rim, spin 475 degrees, and have these little
it
flip shots. But
at
I think he's
least
going to be good for them.
I want to say at least Jalen Brunson got his big contract after going off in the playoffs, where
Yeah,
Julius Randle got his big contract after just completely floundering in the playoffs. So I want to just want to give Jalen Brunson that tiny edge over Julius Randle in the sort of
yeah.
optimism department.
Yeah, just delete the tape of the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors last year, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jalen Brunson's an incredible playoff player. If we want to do that,
I mean,
that line
I'm
of
aware of
history.
his overall. Yeah, but at least like at least he got there. Where Julius Randle got crushed by the Hawks on his home floor
Yeah,
and just didn't look like there was any reason to believe he could ever shoulder a playoff offense. Where I feel like Jalen Brunson's game is a little bit more simple. Like he can be a complementary shooter and
mm-hmm.
he can attack inside. And he's at least a like less harmful defensive position. Anyways, let's go into this top 8 because I think if anyone out there, listeners, if you do not, if you are getting to 8 and have like different picks than us in terms of like who's in the top 8, I would have a problem with that. I think it's very clear who the top 8 teams are in the Eastern Conference. I'm happy to put them in any order, but if you snuck the Bulls or the Knicks into the top 8, I've got issues.
I know there's a few people who
Unless
have, but
yeah, unless you just believe that the Brooklyn Nets, who are my 8th ranked team, are going to
okay.
completely implode even worse than I'm apparently predicting that they're going to implode. This is a weird pick for the Nets because I feel like it's more likely they're going to be number 2 or they're going to be in the lottery. I feel like 8 is me making some weird compromises because I don't really know what to expect with them.
I mean, it's around the same range they finished last year. So I think what you're predicting here is you're predicting some weird fits, which I think is absolutely going to be true. Any Ben Simmons team is just going to have some awkward fits offensively.
Yeah.
I think you're predicting some holes in the roster, which is true. I think you're predicting some injuries, which we can already see is true. With Seth Curry not being ready for opening night. Joe Harris not being ready for opening night either. Kevin Durant struggling to play more than 50 to 60 games per
Yeah.
year the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if all the things that we think are going to happen with the Knicks, or sorry, with the Nets, then this is more likely to be an 8th seed than a 2 seed. I also struggled with ranking them. I also have them as my number 8 team, just expecting
Oh,
all of the many misfortunes that could befall the Nets to befall them. So I think it's going to be a struggle to get through the regular season for them, and ultimately they will be in the play-in.
yeah. My take's not as hot as I thought it was. It's just hard. I was even like, I don't think I was that pessimistic when I was sort of ranking their offense and their defense. I had them as the 8th overall offense and the 18th overall defense, which I think is pretty generous, like finishing 18th
Mm-hmm.
on defense for a team with some big, significant defensive problems and like arguably no rotation bigs on the roster or like starting level rotation bigs, depending. Like, Nicholas Claxton has some very interesting skills, but some big holes in his game. Is Ben Simmons in their front court, or I guess he's their point guard. You got Kevin Durant. It's just like it's a front court that does not inspire defensive dominance. And then 8th on offense doesn't sound like amazing, but when you think of the teams that are in the NBA this year, when you think about the Hawks and the Clippers and the Nuggets and the Pelicans and the Suns and the Timberwolves and the Sixers, like I just like those teams all might finish ahead of the Nets in offense. That wouldn't be crazy. Like you can't come at me and be like, there's no way like Joel Embiid and James Harden and Maxey are gonna like, be worse than the Nets on offense. Like, I think the way that the Nets get better than that is they're just the number 1 offense this year. And Katie
Yeah.
and Kyrie mixed with Ben Simmons' sort of like transition game, hooking up, 3-point shooters. And like if their offense is there, because there's a chance of that. Like this could be the most powerful offense in the NBA.
Yeah.
But I think for that to happen, they need some good health. a drama-free year, and it's just hard to put them above other teams. Like we're all punishing the Nets right now, and they deserve it. They can go out
Mhm.
now and prove us all wrong by having a dominant season and getting back into the championship picture. But I think we're just at that point where you have to it would I think it would be a hot take to put the Nets high. Like you just have to be like all the stuff that happened the last 3 years. There's no way any of that will happen again. Which I don't know. That could happen. I'm into it. Go Nets.
Yeah, I think that there's some awkward fits. I'm really the more I've thought about it, the more I watched in the preseason. I'm really low on the Ben Simmons Nicholas Claxton pairing. I think
Yeah.
they're two of the top five players on the Nets, and it's just going to be really hard to put them on the court at the same time together because there's a lot of spacing issues, a lot of getting in each other's way issues there. So yeah, that's I think neither of us are crazy high on the Nets upside working out, even though we both admit that it's there. Well, for my number 7 seed, I have the Hawks. Very difficult team to rank.
I have the Hawks as
Obviously,
well.
we're right on 2 for 2 so far among the projected playoff teams, I guess. But
Yeah.
very difficult team to rank. Obviously, are going to be great offensively, although it is possible that the DeJounte Murray and Trae Young fit is a little bit awkward to start off the season. We'll see how well Trae adapts to playing off ball, but I'm overall pretty high on their talent, despite some awkward fits offensively, and I think they're going to have some defensive warts even with the upgrades they made this offseason.
Yeah. For me, it's all just completely whether or not they can, like, how much they're going to address their defensive warts this year is going to be their ceiling. I think at this point of the Eastern Conference, like I can see the Hawks. I would comfortably project the Hawks anywhere from 3 to 7 and wouldn't find
Mm-hmm.
that ridiculous. Uh, at this point, it's kind of just like, yeah, I don't picture their defense being that great, so they didn't quite eclipse the next couple of teams that we're going to talk about. But like that's where I think their range is this year. I'd say it could be anywhere from 3 to 8, and that's going to be true with a lot of the teams um, we're about to discuss. So like, there's a couple of teams where they just have like they've got a really high ceiling and they've got a lower floor. And that's how we talked about Atlanta and Toronto and Cleveland at the beginning of this podcast. So I guess let's see where we snuck those other guys. Who do you have at number 6?
I think it's really interesting that you think there's a clear top 2 in the East rather than a clear top 3. But
No, I wouldn't
we'll,
say I wouldn't say that. There's more like I think there's teams that have lower basements than the others. But
okay.
actually, now that I'm looking at my list, yeah, if you're gonna slide up to 3, who I think you're gonna slide up to 3, I'm going to disagree with you. But we'll address that when we get to it.
Okay. Number 6 team, I have the Toronto Raptors as our
Mm.
first locked in playoff team.
Yeah, I've got the Miami Heat.
Okay.
The Heat, they still haven't done anything to address that power forward position. They're old and rickety. They're Tyler Hero dependent. You're really hoping that Jimmy Butler has a healthier season. Kyle Lowry has a healthier season. That Bam Adebayo maybe takes a step forward. There's things that could make the Heat better than they were last year, but as it stands right now from a projection standpoint, I would expect a little bit of a fall off. Even though like we know that from like a coaching perspective and from how they run their team, they're a team that's like more likely to overachieve even if they do have injury problems than underachieve. So I don't feel
Yeah.
great about dropping the Heat. Like they could have everything go wrong and still somehow finish third, and that wouldn't be really crazy either. But yeah, I just have them. I have that offense being pretty average this year. And I think with PJ Tucker leaving, I have their defense falling off just a touch, and that's going to knock them out of the top 5.
I see when you said they have a hole at power forward position, you're not a Haywood Highsmith believer.
Not yet. I know I've heard the hype. That name is coming up quite a bit for like for reasons I'm not quite sure I understand. I'm not in on the Haywood train yet. It's already left the station, and I'm like, who got on that train, and why did I not know about it?
I think it has more to do with Miami's pedigree of finding these undrafted guys that just develop into rotation players, and maybe
Yeah.
less to do with his talent. I mean, he's a very undersized forward, can shoot a little bit. Who knows? Maybe he's the next Duncan Robinson. But yeah, I have the Raptors in that spot just because I do really like their malleability defensively. Hopefully, Fred VanVleet has a bounce back year from his late season and playoff, kind of injured performance. And yeah, we're all really excited about seeing Scotty Barnes' continued development.
Yeah.
We're all believers in Scotty Barnes, think he's going to be awesome, but he is still a second year player. So his
Yeah.
his
He's
prime
also
is still to come.
two things about the Raptors that we haven't said yet. Scotty Barnes is a exciting young player. He's also a weird player that we have no idea how to predict his improvement. Like
Yeah.
people are like, he was so good as a rookie that people are kind of just penciling in, well, he's going to get better. And therefore he's on like a track to becoming like a star, even a superstar level player. But like, I think I watched at least like 60 Raptors games last year, and I have a pretty hard time. I don't know in what ways Scotty's going to improve. He's going to do it in an unpredictable way. Like sometimes I squint and I see a poor man's Magic Johnson, where just this like kind of punishing physical guy who can whip passes around the floor. Obviously, he's not that level of passer, but he's also a little bit more physically gifted than Magic in terms of just like his run and jump skills. Maybe he's going to improve by becoming more of a big man. Like he's got insane verticality around the rim. Like he gets up. Like sometimes he just like gets up on defense to contest a shot, and it's like his elbow is at the rim kind of thing. Like he's I've heard that in terms of like 2-footed jumping in the paint, the only two athletes in the NBA that have been measured and get up higher than him are Rudy Gobert and Robert Williams. So he's got upside as like an interior player. He was a beast in the post. He could improve as a perimeter player and just start hitting those shots. Like there's a whole bunch of ways that he could improve, but we don't know which of those paths he'll walk down or if it will even be as simple as that. So obviously everyone's going to be excited to watch Scotty. I think my main upside with the Raptors this year, or why I'm, keeping them in the top 5, is like, what if Barnes, Siakam, and OG Anunoby, maybe even like Precious Achiuwa or someone's like, what if they just all got like 10% better? Like, I just think that would take them, that would just take them firmly from being this like plucky, dangerous, inconsistent team to being all of a sudden like pretty overwhelming all the time, every night. I think that's all it would take. But if two of those guys improve, if only one of those guys does and the rest of the team stagnates, I think the Raptors will be pretty similar to what we saw last year, though. But I hope they can be a little bit better defensively.
Yeah, and a lot of times development isn't linear. Guys don't always get better on the timetable that we want them to. They don't always improve in the ways that we want them to. I mean, it seems simple, like improve the jump shot, improve the handle, improve the playmaking in that order. That's analytically what makes the most sense. And a lot of times that's not how it works. And guys can get better. Ben Simmons being the prime example in ways that we don't want them to, but does add value to a basketball team. So totally. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Scotty Barnes just grew his post game and his jump shot remained the same. Like that could happen. And it's not going to seem like improvement. At least not in the most obvious way, as if he's hitting 38% from 3, but it will add value to the team. Absolutely. So are the Raptors your number 5 seed, or do you have a different team in there?
No, they're my number 5. That's why I brought them up. Okay. I'm slowly climbing up the ladder.
Okay. And for number 5, I have the Miami Heat. So we just flip-flopped those two. This is just I mean, Nick Nurse is an amazing coach in his own right, but this is just a vote of confidence in Eric Spoelstra. I do see like every year it seems like the Heat don't have the depth to get there around their 2 guys, but then they find a Max Strus, right? And they find a guy who is just seemingly off the street, but he just fills a role for them and fills some really important minutes for them. So perhaps Haywood Highsmith is that guy. Perhaps they make a trade. This could be a Jay Crowder trade team. They've had him before and really enjoyed his contributions while he was there. So I recognize the hole that they have at the 4. I'm not blind to it, but I have confidence that they'll find a way to get a guy who can provide positive minutes for them there.
Caleb Martin's also like pretty good and can step into that role. I just think at that point, like, they're a pretty small team. Like Bam's an undersized center. Jimmy and Caleb Martin would be a very undersized 2-3, and they're going to be playing Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry. You're giving up size basically at every position. It starts to get a little bit janky. With what you said
Yeah,
about Spo, I was, and because you mentioned Nurse, I was like, I would love a Raptors Heat matchup in the first round of the playoffs. Like, if they can nab the 4 or 5 or something like that, I would just love to see Spolestra
that'd be
versus
awesome.
Nurse in the
Yeah.
playoffs. Like, just the two great modern adjusters, like both with sort of low on firepower kind of thing. And the Raptors they played a couple times last year, and it's like, oh my gosh, you've got 8 defenders you can throw at Jimmy Butler. Like, and you can see it. Like, Jimmy Butler's always like a confident bully, but he would try to draw a switch. He would fight for a switch to get OG off of him. And it's like, well, now I just have to go up against Pascal Siakam. Like, what did I do all that for? Like, he looked exhausted. Anyways, it would be a cool series. Let's get up into the home court advantage, though. Now that we've got all these losers out of the way, they can't even get home court in a deep East.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. On both of our lists, the Cleveland Cavaliers haven't shown up yet, but
No, they haven't, but are they about
they
to?
they're about to for me here at number 4. I have the Cleveland Cavaliers as my
Mm-hmm.
first home court advantage team in the East.
Yeah, this seems like a good spot for them. I boosted them slightly above the Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, okay.
I have them as
Interesting.
neck and neck. I've got the Sixers a little bit better offensively, and I have the Cavs a lot better defensively. I could be overrating the Cavs
Okay.
defense. I'm really giving a lot of credit to Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, just being an absolute obstacle for teams night after night, and where it's possible that their perimeter defense uh, really struggles with 2 really small guards and not really a starting level small forward on the roster. So that's, I think, the swing for the Cavaliers. That is the difference between them being the 3 or 4 seed and being closer to the play in. But yeah, I don't like Philadelphia's defense. I think everyone's really
Hmm.
way too excited about their offseason additions. Like, you signed a
Okay.
37-year-old PJ Tucker. Like, the wheels could
Yeah.
come off at any moment, and
Yeah.
that's their big exciting piece. I love the Anthony Melton, and I think they're going to
That's
have
a big exciting piece. Yes.
yeah, but that's at a position where that's at less of a position of need. Like, PJ Tucker is going to be
Yeah.
starting for them night after night, and DeAnthony Melton is going to be their third guard. Um, and even in Memphis, he felt totally expendable. Everyone knew he was good, but it seemed like he was. They didn't need him. No one cried when he left Memphis. I think the Anthony Melton's an awesome player. I agree. He's their biggest acquisition, but their front court's going to be great. It's just, I think people are way too excited that, like, at the forward positions they've added a bunch of former Rockets from that James Harden team. They got Daniel House and PJ Tucker, and I'm just not, if PJ Tucker just kind of loses a step next year or just sort of gets injured, like, I don't know, what did their offseason really amount to. I think James Harden being healthy matters a lot more than any of that, unless you're really excited about Montrezl Harrell, another former member of Daryl Morey's Rockets.
Yeah, I mean, there's some offensive analytics you can look at that say that would lead you to believe Georges Niang is actually a pretty valuable player to
Mm.
have in your lineup. So I mean, they have a little bit of depth there at the 4 spot, but I mean, I agree. It's a little bit rickety with PJ Tucker. We're all waiting for the wheels to fall off. Generally, guys in their late 30s don't have the level of durability that he's shown. But I think, like, despite how his age, he's always had a relatively ground bound game. And also, like, he spent several years overseas before joining the NBA. I think he was
He also
roughly
had his
age
best
like
season in years last year.
26 or 27. Yeah, so he doesn't quite have the same level of miles on his body that many guys at his age would have.
Just personally, I'm always ready once a guy's over 35 or 34 in the NBA. I
Mhm.
am emotionally prepared for them to just stop being an impact NBA player at any moment. Like, just because it does happen. I'm not saying PJ Tucker's definitely going to fall off this year.
Yeah.
I'm emotionally prepared for it. Same with Chris Paul, same with Kyle Lowry. Like, we shouldn't just always expect these guys to keep doing it, because, like, history shows us the drop off sometimes comes out of nowhere. It's like one knee injury, and it's like, and they're not coming back from that. It's like,
Yeah. Or
but
sometimes the drop off is gradual. Like Chris Paul, his production has dropped the last few years.
yeah,
You know, LeBron James, same thing. Like
yeah,
it's not always, or sometimes it's like defensively where the drop off really happens, less than offensively. But
yeah.
you know, the drop off can be a cliff if it's a major injury. But in this modern age of better medical, better like health and training technology and methods than we've ever had, I think the decline tends to be more gradual with these older guys. So that's what I'm seeing with PJ Tucker. So that's why I'm going to have the Philadelphia 76ers a little bit higher. But yeah, for my number 4 seed, it is the Cavs. And I'm willing to admit there's definitely upside. I could 100% see a world in which they sneak into the top 3 of the conference, especially if one of the top 3 teams has some sort of injury or just things don't turn out well for whatever reason. But I mean, the Cavs do have a couple glaring holes with their lack of a small forward really on the roster who you're all that excited about, and then just like a little bit of the spacing issues. But I still think they're going to be a great team. I think they have like so much room to grow. I mean, this is still such a young team, and we're already saying they're one of the best 4 teams in an Eastern Conference that is absolutely loaded. So what does that mean for the next few years with the Cavs? You know, all their best players are in their early 20s.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's excited about their future. For me, I'm just like, I think it just starts now. I think all those guys are really good now. I think Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, it like could just both. I expect both of them to be a little bit better this year. They're still very young and in that kind of point of their development curve where it's very realistic for them to expect them to reach whole new levels in their game. And I liked everything I saw from them
Yeah.
last year. So I'm ready to I want to get on the bandwagon early. I'm like, the Cavs are a top 3 team in the East to me, but obviously these teams are all so close. Like predicting these teams being like, take these top 8, put them in any order. I don't think it's ridiculous. So I'm not hating on anyone except for the Sixers, who I'm kind of hating on a little bit.
Yeah. And then one thing that needs to be said with the Cavs, Jarrett Allen is 24 years old.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know,
Yeah,
he just had
yeah,
his best season last year at age 23. I mean, he's
yeah.
going to get better too. So
Donovan Mitchell is 26, and he's
yeah,
basically their oldest
he's
core
the
player.
elder statesman. Well, after
Yeah.
Ricky Rubio, but yeah,
Well, I mean, on their bench with Love and Rubio, they got some older guys, but those are
they
like
do.
I feel like it's having veterans on a team, on a young team like that make a big difference in terms of teams being good early. Like sometimes just like they might feel like band-aids because they're not part of the long-term plan, but like I don't know. Remember when like the Carmelo, Amari Stoudemire Knicks, who are just not very good, and then they got like Jason Kidd and Rasheed Wallace in their twilight, and just for that one year,
Yeah,
just like this team is just like they're a lot smarter than they should be, kind of thing. Like they're really and then those veterans left and it was over. Where I think Cleveland's in this great position where they're going to benefit from the genius of Rubio and Love, and then have their players be able to grow into even like bigger roles as they sort of get older and smarter. The other concern I have with the Sixers is just like Embiid just had his healthiest season ever. Are we going to get that?
yeah.
Are we going to get that again? Also, like, is Embiid going to chase the MVP super hard again? Because that's like he just did that and then ran out of gas and got hurt a whole bunch in the playoffs again. Like, I think the Sixers should chill. I think the Sixers,
Mhm.
if they're feeling confident about their championship chances this year, like keep Harden and Embiid's role well managed. Play the Anthony Melton a lot of minutes, um, like give me some Paul Reed time at center. Like just do things to preserve those guys, because that should be the concern for them now. Is like I would like to see a healthy playoff run from Embiid, because it's getting kind of annoying every year. It's like a little freak injury that this year
That
was like a
always
broken
happens.
hand, and he got sick
Broken
against the
face.
Raptors in
Yeah.
2019. Yeah, broken face. Yeah, like yeah, he just can't catch a break. So give Embiid a break. Skip out in the MVP race. Get to the playoffs healthy.
I love the sentiment, but I can't see it. And for that reason, I have my number 3 team as the Milwaukee Bucks.
Oh, you still haven't listed the Sixers.
No.
Okay.
Sixers are coming up, but yeah,
Yeah,
I have the Milwaukee Bucks as 3, and I'll just say this is a recent development. I had the Bucks higher, and then the Middleton news comes out that he's still recovering from hand surgery and he's going to miss the first few weeks of the season, and that scares me. I don't think the Bucks depth is really that good. I mean, this is a team that, Wes Matthews, like, love him, but for his contributions to the Blazers back in the day, but my God, this guy should not be playing heavy minutes for an NBA
well,
team at this point in his career.
I hear Wes Matthews' name so much when discussing the Bucks. People keep like like on Zach Lowe's podcast, he keeps mentioning Wes Matthews as their starting shooting guard. I'm like, he played 49 games last year. He started 14 games. He played 20 minutes. Like Grayson Allen was their starting shooting guard last year. Like much more. George Hill started more games than Wes Matthews. Like Wes Matthews is basically done there. They started all 12 games in the playoffs. Is like
I think
referencing, but that was like Middleton went down. Like it was a bit of a different thing.
Yeah. I think the lack of depth was exposed so starkly in the playoff series against the Celtics because a lot of people were like, if the Bucks have a healthy Chris Middleton, they beat the Celtics and make it to the finals and probably win the finals. Maybe they would have. I think it was more than that. If they had any competent two-way wing, it doesn't even have to be someone Chris Middleton's level, they'd win that series. I mean,
I agree.
They had Grayson Allen, who was just an unmitigated disaster defensively, just got completely abused every single time he got switched on to Jason Tatum. Or then they had Wes Matthews, who's just a zero offensively, fires up the occasional somewhat contested corner 3, but does nothing else,
Well, also Wes Matthews doesn't just not do anything else. Is that Wes Matthews will actively pump and drive and take like a contested, like, look at the rim and just like, what are you doing? Like Wes Matthews, when is the last time you hit one of these shots? And he would do it like repeatedly. Like
I can tell you, it was before he tore his Achilles in like 2016.
Yeah. I mean, he bounced back from that Achilles injury. I feel like he like tore his Achilles and then was out for like 4 months and it was just like, I'm back. And it was a different player from that point. But I mean, he deserves points for that toughness. But like he's 36 now. Like it's time for us to stop talking about Wes Matthews as meaningful to anything in terms of a team's title hopes. I think everything I said about the Sixers in terms of the rickety, parts of their rotation that I don't think can be counted on can 100% be said about the Bucks. Like, Brook Lopez missed all of last year and is so important to what they do. And he's now 34, will turn 35 at some point during the season. And if Brook Lopez all of a sudden stops being a starting level center in the NBA, the Bucks are in a very different, like they're a different team. They're no longer, they no longer have this terrifying wall in the paint of Lopez and Giannis next to each other. Because without Lopez last year, this vaunted Milwaukee Bucks defense fell to 14th. That's the kind of impact that putting Giannis and Brook Lopez next to each other has. I think the upside in this roster is I can't not root for Martin Beauchamp. Just knowing even a little bit about his story. Like I would love if he could pop right away as just like not a starter, but just like adding another wing to their rotation who's got a little bit of athleticism and toughness.
Yeah.
If Joe Ingles can come back for the playoffs and just offer a little bit of perimeter playmaking, not even at the level he was doing in Utah before his injury, because I think that's a little bit unrealistic to expect. He was already dropping off a bit and was already getting older before his injury. But if he could kind of come back fresh and just sort of like, shoot threes and bring some of that nifty passing, I think that, again, not as like a starting piece, but as like Grayson Allen off the bench or Jordan Nwora or things like that. Even though Jordan Nwora probably is like another offensive upside piece for them. It's just like, until I see him do something, I'm not going to be that excited. I think Pat Connaughton is injured now as well. Like he's out with not long term, but he has a calf injury. So they're going to start off the season pretty thin on the wings, which maybe means more opportunity for Marjon Beauchamp.
That's true. Yeah, I just think, or Javon Carter, who I think
Yeah, yeah, he's good.
is a solid player. But yeah, we got the Joe Ingles experience a little bit in Portland last year. I mean, he didn't play for us
Oh, right.
obviously with the ACL injury, but we traded for him, and I think this terrible Portland Trailblazers roster where we were just unabashedly tanking and had no interest in being good. We traded for Joe Ingles, and I think we won the next 3 or 4 straight games just inexplicably.
Just with him
So
there smiling.
yeah, his presence alone. And then we proceeded to lose, like 20 games in a row or something like that. But yeah, so maybe Joe Ingles' presence can help galvanize the Bucks. But yeah, the injury issues, the lack of depth. I think there's 5 players on the roster that I really like, which are, Drew Holiday, Middleton, Portis, Brook Lopez, and then obviously Giannis. I think it just speaks to how great Giannis is. Like, this is a team with not a lot of depth, like just a lot of holes on the roster. And yet I have them as a top 3 team in the East. Sounds like you have them as a top 2 or 1 team in the East just because of
Yeah, I had him at 2.
how amazing Giannis is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically the best floor to have in terms of a two-way player. Like, I don't think your defense is going to fall below average with Giannis out there, with even like a okay supporting cast. Yeah, I mean, in the playoffs, he's a monster, and he keeps getting a tiny little bit better.
Every year.
So
Yeah.
his playoff stats are just like so silly to look like. They're like not even like prime LeBron isn't putting up the like, because he's just like, he puts up like 35 point, like 14 rebound per game averages over a series with like 5 to 7 assists. It's like it's really getting, even in the series that we thought Giannis had a bad series, like, oh, that's when the Raptors figured out Giannis. That's when the Heat figured out Giannis. You go back and look at the stats, and you're like, they like figured him out, so he only averaged like 26 and 12 on 50% shooting or something like that.
Well, what they figured out is whenever Giannis drives to the paint, they could collapse 3 defenders and no one on the Bucks could hit a 3-point shot. So
yeah,
they were given the liberty to do that.
but now he's got a little floater, and now he's got a little
Mm-hmm.
turnaround. Like, he scores better from like 5 to 7 foot range than he did back when he was getting stopped by the Raptors and the Heat. That I feel like that teams are still going to try to do that to him, but it's not as effective as it was.
It doesn't work anymore. There was a switch that flipped, and I think the Heat series, when they lost to the Heat in 6 games in the bubble, was kind of the final straw. And Giannis at that stage was still like, he would panic a little bit. Like, he would get loosey goosey with the ball and turn it over when the defense collapsed on him after he got into the paint, and he wouldn't have that like rapid decision making that he's come to develop. And ever since that point, I think they either swept the Heat or beat the Heat in 5 games the next season, just avenged their loss en route to a title. But he figured some things out, and I think
Yeah.
just that split second decision making after the defense collapses was huge, because you can no longer play that wall defense against Giannis effectively. It just is not a strategy that you can employ.
Yeah.
At least not to the same level that you used to be able to against him.
Yeah. It's great to see. It's really fun to watch a talent like that slowly figure it out and improve. Like, I feel like we got that with LeBron to a different extent, as we saw like playoff defenses figure out ways to be effective against him, and he just slowly added things to his game that just made all those options like less impactful and less effective against him, until it was just like, yeah, there's nothing. This guy is just going to put up monstrous numbers against you, and your team better just be a whole lot better than his if you have a chance of winning. So I think we've wrapped up everything except for who our number 1 team is. And if people
I will quickly interject and say 76ers are my number 2 seed.
Yeah. No, I think I gathered that.
Yeah.
So you have you have Sixers
have
2,
1.
Bucks 3. Yeah. And I've got Sixers 4, Bucks 2, Cavs 3. Yeah. And that leaves only one team. Very boring of us to choose the finals participant from last year, but the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
They're the only team left.
They have to be the 1 seed by default.
Yeah. And the Celtics have there's some ways in which they've got some early season struggles to get through. without even going into the coaching change, they're starting off the year with Robert Williams injured. They survived without him defensively at times last year and often during the playoffs, but it's not ideal to start without him. And who knows how healthy he'll be once he comes back. Al Horford's a year older. They've shored up their backcourt like
with the Malcolm Brogdon trade.
Yeah, like that's like very. I feel like that's become a little bit underrated considering if Malcolm Brogdon can just stay healthy, he's like, kind of an all-star, like a near all-star level player, and he'll be coming off the bench for them and is this big 6'5" strong guard who can shoot it and run pick and rolls and defend three positions. Pretty insane thing for a finals team to add, but everyone's kind of, I think everyone got over it really quick and we're like, yeah, whatever. They added another decent guard to their rotation. And I think people are rightfully concerned about his health problems and stuff. They're very small to start the year. That's my big concern with them. Like they're very puny. They don't have any bigs.
Yeah, depending on how much they want to rely on Al Horford, and they definitely want to try to keep him fresh for the playoffs. So I don't foresee him playing like over 30 minets a game this
he's
season
36 and he's an undersized center, like to start with. He's already he's already you want to play him with another big against a lot of teams because you don't want to be like asking him to like box out and fight against like multiple large bodies sort of every night. That's basically asking for an injury. But I don't know what's their front court rotation going to be like. Blake Griffin.
I think Grant
Noah
Williams
Vonleh.
But
he's kind of a wing, right? He's like he'll play some five, but he doesn't jump. He doesn't have crazy long arms. He's 6'6". He's strong enough to like guard. Like he's not going to get posted up and abused like that, but he's not going to be like manning your back line and being a huge help defender and stuff like that, though. I guess that's not really a problem for the Celtics because they get help from everywhere. Like Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart are excellent help defenders. Derek White is no slouch. Like this team draws a lot of charges. Even Blake Griffin can help with that. I think Blake Griffin, despite being old and rickety, is like he had some moments in Brooklyn where it's like, okay, you find ways to help. You can't be like consistently depended on for a lot of things. Like your shot's not consistent. Your health is a big problem, but like you're going to go out there and you're going to be very hardworking and smart and dutiful. But I would love for Blake to like, just have an understated solid year where he's just a useful rotation piece. But I think that's a bit unreasonable to expect that.
Well, one thing we should finish up on in Celtics is the coaching change. And this is the hope that I have with Joe Mazzulla coming in and being their new coach. The Celtics themselves have been a bit of a muck pile offensively in fourth quarters of games. Even during their winning streak last year, they kind of got to avoid in the later half of the season where they're just trucking everyone and winning games by 30 points. They got to avoid it just by virtue of not having close fourth quarter games. But in the playoffs, when things slowed down, you really saw this against the Bucks. You saw this in Game 7 against the Heat. You saw this in the latter half of the Golden State series. Late in games, their offense just kind of slows to a halt, and it's Tatum taking step back threes. It's Jaylen Brown dribbling into a crowd of people and dropping the ball. I don't know. I just think Brad Stevens struggled with this issue. Udoka picked up where he left off. And I just think if Joe Mazzulla can turn it around, add just like a spice, a little bit of offensive creativity, maybe putting the ball in Brogdon's hands, I see the Celtics going right back to the finals if that's the case.
I mean, the Celtics problem has always offensively has always been it's not hard for them to generate okay offense. Like they can generate a 40-45% chance look at a nothing. They've got lots of tough shot makers on their roster, but they don't have a way to generate really, really good offense.
Easy shots. So, they don't get easy shots hardly ever.
A big thing about Jason Tatum, and this holds true to a certain extent for the other Jaylen Brown, but Jason Tatum does not get to the rim and generate efficient offense there. Like when it comes down to it against a good defense, he is a pull-up jump shooter. He's like
Mhm.
he's like Kawhi Leonard without the tremendous strength. And it's like
Yeah.
that's still an amazing player. Like that's still like, Jason Tatum's a consensus top 10 player in the NBA, but you kind of see it time and time again. Like you look at you look at his percentages and think like, oh, this guy gets the rim and finishes well there and stuff like that. But then you see those percentages just like shrink when it comes to the playoffs. Like this guy gets into the paint for about 20% of his field goal attempts during the regular season. In the playoffs, it always drops down to about like, drops down under 20% to like 17%. And he gets less in the floater range and everything like that. And all of a sudden, it's like every playoff series, all of a sudden this guy's shooting 42% from the field and instead of 47. And it's kind of like he still puts up his scoring numbers, but it's not like elite. It's not elite level offense. Like it's just okay. It's pretty good. He needs a lot of volume to get there, and you can see how that affects the Celtics' overall offense. So I don't really see their way out of that. Like unless they are all of a sudden running like Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams pick and rolls and getting dunks and stuff like that, or if Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown can get a little bit more consistent offense at the rim, or just put a little bit more pressure in the paint so they can fall back on their tough shot making a little bit less often. It just felt once they got into the playoffs, like this is kind of all we got. We're going to take tough mid-range shots all the time, and bad defenses or okay defenses won't be able to stop that, and good defenses will be able to beat us essentially. So I think that will be, I don't think that's going to change at all. It's really about them being a dominant defense again. And if Brogdon can add a little bit of spice, a little bit of variety to their offense and a little bit more of a pick and roll attack, that could be cool. If Robert Williams could come back and be healthy and stay healthy, that would be huge. Because if they get one more great year at Al Horford, that's probably all they should feel lucky for that. Like again, another like older guy, like the wheels could come off at any point in time. So like absolutely value every minute you get out of Al Horford, because you never know when it will be the last elite minute he plays. And he was a monster last year in the playoffs. He was like I think he was arguably their sort of like MVP in the playoffs with what he was doing on defense. And
yeah, certainly in the Bucks series. I mean, he arguably had the two best playoff games in his entire career in back to back in game. I think it was 4 and 5 in the Bucks series, and they lose to the Bucks if not for Al Horford. So
yeah, he would come in with very timely scoring, even though that's like not really his role on this team. But like their offense would dry up, and Al Horford would just go on this monstrous like threes and dunks run, and they live to fight another day. But also he was switching everything. He was manning their back line. He was a defensive animal. So good for him. I was really happy to see that from him. And hopefully for the Celtics, he can do it for at least one more year.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's going to do it for our Eastern Conference preview. And we're hoping to give our predictions for the West within the next couple of weeks here. And that will be after the season starts, of course. But, hope it's still early off.
We're going to be cheating.
We're going to take early on enough in this season. I don't think that the first couple of games are going to tell us exactly how things are going to play out. So
yeah,
there'll
hopefully
still be predictions.